Hello, everybody, and welcome to another very special episode of Crime Over Wine, an update episode. I am joined once again for what is this now, like the fourth time, Joseph, that you've been on Crime Over Wine?
No, Liam, I was adding to my notes. I'm like update one, update two, update three. I don't know. I feel like it's just the
Yeah,
the Betty Willis edition of Crime Over Wine. I don't
basically, yeah. You're basically like a permanent co-host on
right.
this podcast
I don't
now, but for a very good reason
yeah.
this time. Very, very good reason. What a great day for
Yeah.
justice,
Yeah.
Joseph, huh?
Did you think this would weren't you losing faith? I'll be honest. I was like getting a bit
Oh,
discouraged.
Oh, Faith was gone. Faith was out the window. Faith was in whatever European country you're recording this
Yes, I
podcast
know.
from. That
I know.
it was out the door.
Seriously.
But let's clue everybody in, right? So we are here to tell you all that there is hashtag justice for Betty. Finally, what 5 years, 8 months, and 21 days later,
Something like
we're
that.
here.
Yeah, like okay, where you are right now, what time is it? Give them the real
It
time.
is 8:07
Okay, so where 8
in the morning.
8:07 a.m. Where I am, it's 3:07 p.m. because life marches on apparently, and time zones and whatever. Nothing
Mm-hmm.
can stop us from focusing on justice for Betty, which took 5 years, 10 months. And the more I felt
Mm-hmm.
like Betty was being ignored, the more I obsessed over making sure she could not be ignored.
Right.
And it finally happened. Like,
Right.
suddenly Orange County said, okay, here's the court date. It's happening September 2023. Of course, I was apprehensive. I was texting you saying, I think this is the date. I'm not sure. Wait, it's
Yeah.
being pushed back. It finally
Yeah,
happened.
well, and if you listen to the last update episode too, we were like real skeptical about whether this was going to go through. So, but we're here, right?
Liam, I can tell you, I was there front and center in court. It actually happened.
I just feel the need to like say, again, for all the crime. I think everyone knows where we're going here at this point. For all the crime vineyard. So Rosendo Zopek guilty on both counts of rape, murder of Betty Jane Willis
Yeah.
on January 1st of 2018. It happened this week, and again, Joseph, the first one to talk about this, and to the first one to write about this to begin with, and the first one to put it out here that we finally have again hashtag justice for Betty.
I feel like the source, because everyone's like, where do I get updates? I've got people emailing me. And by the way, you
Right.
should know my website traffic, and my website's not something that's promoted. It's an indie, freelance journalist kind of nothing's really going on
Mm-hmm.
there. Let's be honest. The website traffic shot up 300%. I thought, why
Wow.
is this going up 300%? It's because it's you, Liam, Crime Over Wine, and me, josephinity.com, covering Betty.
Right.
So it's like this is the only place to get, unfortunately, no offense to you or me, but this is where you can
Mm.
get the Betty information, the Betty updates.
So first off, I want to know if you've gotten a chance to talk to to Betty's daughter at this point. I want to know if what she has to say about this.
Yeah, and I just sent her this episode. So I just sent her the
Mm.
Crime Over Wine update because that's again, she's that's the wild part of this whole thing is that beyond the true crime portion of it, beyond that aspect, it's like
Mm.
there are other people on the other end going, okay, I need to know what's going on. I want updates. I want to
Right.
see coverage. I need to see coverage. You and I might want to see coverage. There are other people who need to see coverage. And uh, you know, she's what is the word? Not thrilled. But she is, it's like a weight off her shoulders. I saw her outside the
Oh
courthouse.
yeah.
Stephanie, the daughter of Betty Willis, the 76-year-old victim in this case, it was just like, it was just, I don't know. You know how it is when it's just like something is
Yeah.
finally over,
Right.
something that's been
Right.
hanging
Right.
over for five and a
Yeah.
half, almost 6 years.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and it's like a good ending to like a horrible
That's
thing,
right.
right?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like we've all I everyone listening to this like knows the feeling, but again, kind of where we're at, like can't put their finger on what it's called or what
No,
it's
what
supposed to
that
be or how
emotion
it's supposed
is.
to be.
And you know what? The
Right.
people who have listened, the crime over whiners who have listened to, at least 3 or 4 of these updates, however many we've had, they
Mm-hmm.
know the feeling that we are,
Right. Oh yeah.
describing but can't
Oh
put our
yeah.
finger on. And
Yeah.
outside the courthouse, that was the feeling that I got from Betty's daughter, Stephanie, who's there,
Mm-hmm.
like who would love nothing more than to have, when this happened on January 1st, 2018, Betty Willis, her 76-year-old mother, raped and killed.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, can we go get this over with? As in, because it's
Right.
not over. It's not the death
Mm-hmm.
is not the end. And again, we talked about that's why I titled the article "Killing Betty Willis" because it's still happening.
Right.
Um, it's like there was finally this again 5 years and 9 months after this was caught on camera, which
Right.
I will tell you, it was caught on camera. We saw the photos. Stephanie, the daughter, she knew that this day was coming where she was going to have to sit in court for her mother, Betty, and see these photos and see these video clips from the surveillance footage. Again, go back to the previous episodes Liam's done on this. And it's like, how you just want to fast forward through life and just let's get this done with. And so
Right.
outside the courthouse, here we are nearly 6 years later. It was just, it was like, that it was just a relief off of her shoulder. I could see this burden
Mm.
lifted, and the burden of like, I just want justice for my mom. It was just a,
Yeah.
a feeling of
Right.
relief, I think, for everyone.
Yeah, and you know what's crazy, and one of the things that I've been thinking about very recently, about this whole case is, because you talk about, and this is very clearly a true crime podcast, right? Obviously, but I think about, the cases that I cover on this podcast, and how Betty's case is really an outlier in the sense of it seems like such an open and shut case, and so most true crime podcasts, right, like wouldn't even cover that because it would have been like said, done, like over, like absent the fact that it took 5 years to get here, 5+ years, almost 6 years to get here, we probably would not have covered this case for that reason. And so I was just thinking about that recently, just about how, like, almost in like this really weird way, right? Like the fact that they took forever to get there, like it's almost like like elevating, like we like no one would have found out who Betty really was. This remarkable story that you uncovered, if her justice wasn't delayed for so long. And isn't that crazy?
No, that's right. That's crazy. And you're 100% right. If this was, the media was there, like, I mean, you
Mm-hmm.
go look up Betty Willis murder, CBS,
Mm-hmm.
Fox News, everyone was there when it was like this,
Mm.
scandalous headline. But we know, you and I've been in those newsrooms. It's difficult for them to hang on for more than a
Yeah.
few seconds. It's
Right.
like on to the
Right.
next thing. But you're absolutely right. The slow burn of Betty Willis has turned it into true crime, honestly, because
Yeah.
when people started approaching me saying, "Oh, it's like true crime," I said, "Well, I was resistant to that just because I thought, well, no, true crime is like a mystery and there's like
Mm-hmm.
something missing."
Right.
Guess what? Even though Betty's murder was caught on camera, even though they had the suspect in custody within minutes of the incident happening, the murder, it did become true crime because there was such a delay in justice, and years and years
Mm-hmm.
and years. You and I have been talking for some of those years now, if you can believe that.
Mm.
But so much time has passed that it did become
Right.
true crime because that mystery element of what is going on,
Mm.
just it. But you're absolutely right. I don't. You and I wouldn't be here talking if it had gone as it should have. You and I would have
Mm-hmm.
moved on to the next thing.
Yeah.
So in some ways,
Well, and isn't that kind of like miraculous and a little beautiful there on that front too? Again, it's heartbreaking. I'm not
right,
saying that there's like
right,
a silver
yeah,
lining here at all,
yep.
but like I do think so again, so go back and listen to episode 10. I got it right that time
There you go.
of this podcast, because Joseph writes about this, and go read about it on josephennedy.com/Betty, because Joseph writes about this like really beautiful way that and beautiful and tragic way that Betty's life unfolded. And we would never have been introduced to Betty if Rosendo Peck was like went through the criminal justice system on a timely manner, and everything was fine. It would have just been another blip on the radar, probably.
Yes, if everything
Right.
had gone as it should, if
Right.
everything had sort of gone as it should have, if if the district attorney's office in Orange County, California, had returned my calls and emails,
Mm-hmm.
if they,
Sure.
but I started going, something doesn't smell right, and it just,
Mm-hmm.
it was just the more I got the feeling that Betty was being ignored, and again, it's like a broken record, for lack of like,
Mm-hmm.
your Crime Over Wine listeners have heard this, but that was what really pushed me over the edge. And I think I had someone ask me the other day. They said, "Well, why are you so obsessed with this?" And I said, "Because you're not." And that was the simple
Yeah.
response. It's like,
Fair.
you know what? That it's as simple as
Yeah.
that. I will handle this. Like I feel
Mm-hmm.
like the person, when you go to Walmart and there's someone in charge of a certain department. This is me. I'm handling the Betty department. I will be here for
Mm.
that. I will handle this
Sure.
department. We went into court. It was a 4 or so day trial. It was kind of stretched out because we had certain days off. But we went into court, and there were things that it was just like over time. Um, I think certain stories become your friends. They're not
Mm-hmm.
supposed to, but they do. Certain
Mm-hmm.
characters in stories become your friends or companions, and I know that might sound a little bit strange, but it's really not, because you see this photo of this mother, this grandmother,
Mm.
this former soul
Mm-hmm.
singer, and it's sort of, it's part of what you're going to do is to see to it that you document what happens next. It's not my job to see that Betty gets justice, but it's my job to document whether she does
Right.
or does not. And so you go into the courtroom, Liam, and I'm trying to be what they taught me to be however many years ago. Like, this is you being a journalist. You're gonna, like, just tell this, But you go in and it's like I
Yeah.
heard the judge say murder of Betty Willis. Oh, that's what Liam and I have been
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah.
They're saying her name out
Other
loud.
people know about this? Right.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Uh-huh.
And I'm
Yeah.
looking around and I'm like, "Oh my God, we're here. We're talking about
Mm.
Betty and what happened to her."
Yeah. I do want to know, like, was there anything that we didn't know already that came out
Yeah,
in court?
sure,
Yeah.
absolutely. Thanks for asking. A couple things. We had some this okay, part of this delay, part of the excuse for this delay was that the suspect, 22 years old at the time, 28 today, when he was designated a murderer and rapist,
Mm-hmm.
this guy, Rosendo Peck, says that when he came to the United States, he didn't speak English. He also didn't speak Spanish. He spoke this ancient Mayan dialect. Those of you who've been
Mm-hmm.
following along know it's Quechua, or something similar to Quechua. It's an ancient Mayan dialect, ancient Mayan language. It's spoken in parts of Guatemala. He Here's the deal. The What Liam has learned, what I have learned, what many other people who followed along have learned, is that it is common that you do arrive from many parts of this country speaking some form of Spanish or Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he says he didn't speak Spanish. Now, we found out that his 45-minute interrogation by Santa Ana police back in 2018, that entire 45-minute interrogation was done in Spanish. Okay, you do the math.
Mm.
So that was
Okay.
played, all 45 minutes of that was played in court.
Wow.
Hmm.
Mm.
Another thing was played in court, something I had no idea. Breaking news on Crime Over Wine. Hold your wine glasses tightly.
Mm-hmm.
A recorded jailhouse telephone call from Rosendo Peck to a friend of his. He made a phone call. That phone call that he made to a friend of his was entirely in Spanish. This is a personal phone call in jail that was recorded. That was played in court. That was a purely Spanish phone call. So this whole thing about, like, you know, I speak
Mm.
this unheard of, or difficult to find, I should say, not unheard of, difficult to find translator,
Yeah.
interpreter for the court. I only speak this. We knew that was
Yeah.
BS. We found out for sure that that was BS. That was
Yeah.
one of the things.
Well, so what? How did the prosecutors react to that then? Because I'm sure that they knew that a long time ago, right? I mean, they had to have. I mean, I'm sure they got that 45-minute interrogation like an hour after it all happened. No.
So, you've got one side just like, okay, first off, the opening statements, hashtag you're welcome. It was just the first three paragraphs of my Los Angeles Magazine story from
Mm.
um, a year ago.
Mm.
It took me a minute to process. I thought, okay, well, this is matching up just because, of course, I have the facts straight. One thing I do have straight are the
Mm-hmm.
facts. That's about it. But
Mm.
got the facts straight. So I thought, okay, there's the opening statement. So, of course, it lines up. But then after a while, it
Yeah.
was like, I don't want to use the word lazy. I'm appreciative
Yeah.
of. Anyway, it was just like
Well,
this is a
hey,
copy paste.
that's how you know you wrote a good story then,
I'm
huh?
telling
Yeah,
you,
if the
if
other people are taking it from you.
at first it was just matching up, then it was like, oh my God. I looked around. I was like, for better or worse, I think that I just wrote the opening argument.
Mm.
You've got Rosendo Peck's side. You've got his public defender. Oh God, what do you do when you walk into something and you're losing? You're going
Mm.
into a battle to lose. I
Mm.
mean, where can you go with it? There was nowhere to go. It's like this is just we finally got around to it.
Yeah.
I
Mm.
honestly I don't know if we will ever have. I'll probably end up asking a few more times as I wrap this up.
Sure.
It's like, between COVID and this alleged
Mm.
ancient Mayan dialect, it's like it. I'll tell you I can't tell you their answer. I'll tell you my answer. Part of it has been bad luck. Betty's music
Mm.
career, bad luck. It just didn't pan
Sure.
out. Many parts of Betty's life, bad luck, didn't pan out.
Mm.
And that's,
Mm-hmm.
once again, back to what we were talking about. That's why I've been so adamant. I would like something to work out for Betty. It took a while. It wasn't
Yeah.
perfect. It should have been a year, 2 years max. I think we finally got something right. Um,
Yeah.
Betty's story deserves to be told, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There were other things that there were some really graphic moments, and this is what I alluded to just a bit ago when I said I walked into the court going, okay, I'll be like,
Mm.
a journalist back in the day when I was like not freelance and not independent, and I like, had to follow a story and,
Mm-hmm.
not get attached, like my news director said, Joseph, you're getting too attached to the story. You're getting too into it. You're
Mm.
caring too much about whatever. Um, but you go in and it's like Aunt Betty. We all have a Betty in our lives, whether it's a friend. There is a Betty in all of our lives. And you go in there and you start to hear things like, first off, we see video. Video I've told you guys all about. Video I've never seen, but video we finally all saw together at one time. We saw photos. Photos of Betty that you've never seen. Photos of Betty not alive. Photos of a victim. It's not even Betty, it's just the
Mm.
victim. It's just like when you and I have listened to those clips I've sent you of they're gonna put me in the movies, they're gonna make a big star out of me, all I gotta do
Mm-hmm.
is act naturally. We hear such life.
Yeah.
And what we
Yeah.
had to see, and what Betty's daughter had to see, and what Betty's granddaughter had to see was Betty with the complete opposites,
Mm. Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
and,
Man.
we heard testimony from a coroner, we heard testimony from um, investigators and police that arrived on scene that morning, January 1st, 2018, in Santa Ana, California. And we heard things like, okay, because we know that Betty was raped. What we know of our publicly available information, investigation, stuff that I've
Mm-hmm.
uncovered. We know Betty was murdered. We know Betty was raped. But we don't know that what I didn't know, what you guys didn't know, is that there was force so hard that a bone in Betty's neck was fractured. A bone near Betty's
Oh
neck
my
was
gosh.
fractured. So you're
Yeah.
sitting there, and everyone is the judge too. It's everyone, the jury. Oh God, you look at a jury, it's like these innocent looking people who just are trying to get
Yeah.
through the day. And
Right.
it's like
Right.
everyone is looking around. And here's the one takeaway, Liam. Many takeaways, but one takeaway from me is like, for me, was that I look around and there were so many people who were brought together by Betty. Even this, or it was just like the 911 caller took the stand. This woman who, you know, no one was supposed to be there. Betty wasn't supposed to be there. The killer wasn't supposed to be there. The it was just like, again, I know that I'm like talking very elementary here. I know it's true crime and this is what happens. But as someone who is not a crime and justice reporter, as someone who, is not knee deep in this true crime stuff on a day-to-day basis, with the exception of the Betty Willis case, it was like, here I am in this courthouse going, how did we all get here? We got here because of one person's
Mm,
actions, and one person's actions, as we all know with true crime, it just becomes this, cascading effect of, oh
yeah.
my God, when will this end?
Yeah, yeah, you described that so well. By the way, I mean, I'm already seeing your next article being written like right before my eyes. But I mean, it is kind of crazy how these kinds of events kind of bring like a whole hodgepodge of people together in
None
like
of us
this
are supposed to be
really
there. None of us.
tragic way.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
A
right.
courthouse is a depressing place.
Oh,
That's all
sure
I
is.
do.
I would still rather be in a courthouse than a hospital,
Thank you. Yep.
hands down.
Yep. Yep.
But yeah, but so the sentence, when the sentencing is going to be. I think that's the logical next step here.
Yes, that is the end of this month, and I'll say the
Okay.
date for what it's worth, but September 28th.
Okay.
But for those listening in general, it's at the end of September 2023. Sentencing, again, what we do have for sure is guilty on murder, guilty on the enhanced rape charge,
Mm-hmm.
the enhanced sentencing. So that's kind of where we stand. We've got a really strong surviving daughter who is paying attention
Mm,
to this podcast, paying attention to just being happy that there is a part of her mother that is being remembered. This
mm-hmm.
recently unearthed, and by recently I mean 5 years, but recently
Right.
unearthed soul career. This
Yeah.
voice of Betty. By the way, the opening statements, if I can just say, the opening was basically like there was this whole thing about how, and you and I have talked about this before, Liam, but it was basically referencing how Betty had such a strong voice, and while that's not the voice that got people's attention in her music career at the time, it was the voice that got someone to
Mm,
call 911. And that was really
yeah.
powerful, that it was Betty's voice.
Yeah.
Maybe it didn't get all the record sales, maybe it didn't get on the radio as much as it should have, but it was Betty's voice that did save her at the end, or at least
Yeah.
not save her, catch her killer. If it weren't for Betty's
Right.
voice, her killer wouldn't have been caught.
Yeah. Well, Joseph, it is always a pleasure having you on, and we will, we'll have to have you on for, now that we're kind of wrapping up
Yeah.
here. I don't think we're totally wrapped up. I think we're definitely looking at another Betty thing at some point, in some way, shape, or form. So we're not done with Betty just yet. No one's done with Betty just
Yeah,
yet. Just to be clear
right.
for all the listeners, but
But I get what you mean, and I love what you mean, because it's
yeah.
like we're finally
Yeah.
putting a end stop on this
Right.
justice for Betty. We're just about
Right.
there. We're really just about there.
Yeah.
And I hope you and I just, the next time we talk is just to hang out. But I think we'll have
Yeah.
one more like, oh my God,
Yeah.
here's what came of all this. But
Sure.
and it's been interesting. I will tell you that last thing I'll say is there have been people reaching out to me. I told you this 300% spike increase in this
Mm-hmm.
traffic of a site that's not even being, but it's this Betty section where people are messaging me saying
Yeah.
all sorts of things, but it's just like all sorts of positive things about like
Yeah.
just how this woman, even in her death, has connected people
Yeah.
beyond the true crime community too. But yes,
Yeah.
Liam, thank you for covering this Betty Willis case.
My
Thank you for letting
pleasure.
her voice be heard.
And thank you for sharing. I don't think we've thoroughly talked about this enough on this podcast, but like thank you for sharing this with me, because I think that it would have been so easy for you to sell this story to whoever, and like and like profited majorly off of this. I would probably take a good guess. I don't know how freelancing reporting works, but I would probably take a good guess. And so it's great though, because you care so much that you are just interested in sharing it with whoever will listen.
You get
And
it.
so
You
I
get it.
appreciate
Yep.
that. Yeah.
Yep.
And I definitely got that. And so you didn't have to come on this podcast 4, 5, 6 times, whoever know. I don't even know how many
And
times at this point, but you did.
and
Yeah.
on this
From
random
whatever European country.
exactly
Yeah.
whatever time zone
Yeah.
I'm in, I can't believe. But you
Right.
know what? You've been so committed to Betty, and I
Yeah.
I
Sure
just have
have.
to appreciate it. So thank
Yeah.
you, and thanks to all the crime over wine people for sipping their
Yeah.
wine and wanting justice for Betty. We got there
Yeah,
finally.
we sure did. We sure did. Well, Joseph, thank you again so much, and thank you all so much for listening to Betty's story again. So there are 2 other update episodes waiting for you if you have not listened to either of those just yet. Episode 10 of this podcast also goes into the beautiful and tragic long story of Betty Willis. So go check all of that out. Go check out josephennedy.com/Betty. To if you just can't get enough of what we're talking about here. And you really just want to see justice for Betty from beginning to
And go
end.
listen to her
Go ahead and
music.
do that,
Go listen to her
and go
songs right
listen to her
now.
music. It's beautiful. It's fantastic music. It's powerful, powerful stuff. So thank you all so much for listening again. And we will see you on Wednesday for your regularly scheduled episode of Crime Over Wine.
Proud member of the Podnuga Network.